it's more of a PowerPoint to guide us through a conversation. Not everything is on there, but as I said, I'm more than happy to have a chat about anything afterwards. And if you actually encountered a situation like Richard, you're more than welcome to jump in and just share any experience you have on a specific matter that maybe was a bit more complicated and you managed to overcome the issue, or yeah, share knowledge. That'd be appreciated, or ask away questions. So I'll just start. So boring thing first, just a disclaimer, just to say this is not immigration advice. This is literally just a webinar intended to just give a bit of training and provide general information. But as you would expect, any advice needs to be tailored to your situation. So please don't take this as advice. It's just guidance. So sponsor compliance, it's extremely important. It's a critical part of the sponsorship. If you don't comply, they will have ramification, and it could be serious. It could have serious consequences on your business and on the employees you're sponsoring. So it is very important to be spot on at all time to make sure that your house is in order and that you're following your duties and obligation, and everything is in order, so that if the Home Office come and visit you, you're not looking around to find things, and that you have a structure in place. Just to give you an idea of how serious the Home Office takes it, there were about 15 license revocation every week in the recent years. And it has been a bit quieter during the COVID. The Home Office wasn't carrying out visits, audits, to make sure that sponsors were compliant because of COVID restrictions, but they very much started their visits again. And also when you apply for a license, they obviously look into it. So this is very, very important. If you're, in passing, I'm just mentioning, if you ever receive a visit or a notice, or you have any, you're unsure about something, you might have done something wrong, or it's always better to contact me, for example, or any other an immigration specialist, just to mitigate the consequences of hello Sandeep.
Hi, how are you? Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, the consequences of getting it wrong, really. So just, I don't want to scare you, but the consequences for failing to comply, like I said, can be very serious. Will always be serious, because you will be put on the spot and you would have to take action. There could be a downgrade of your license. So if you issue with the license, you'll get an A rating. So that means you can sponsor foreign nationals. But if you're downgraded for, usually it's for minor issue of compliance, but that the Home Office is still of the opinion that you can be trusted, provided that you follow an action plan and you prove that you have implemented policies and procedures in place. So they would come back and see you to assess that. So if your license is downgraded, you will be unable to sponsor new workers, but you will be able to carry on sponsoring the workers you're already sponsoring. But you will have a quite a limited, time-limited period to meet the requirements set out by the Home Office in the action plan, and there will most likely be a cost involved to that. There could be a suspension of your license. Again, you will be unable to assign any certificate of sponsorship. This is with the view to revoke your license, but the Home Office needs a bit more time to investigate the situation. And the worst case scenario is the revocation of your license. Revocation means you will not be able to sponsor any foreign nationals. That means those that you are currently sponsoring, their visa will be curtailed to usually is 60 days. And they will have to find a new sponsor, a new job, or leave the UK, or apply under any other immigration visa category. But if they can't do that, they will have to leave the UK and return to their home country. So that would have a very serious impact on the employees that you're sponsoring. It would be a stressful time, and also it also means that, you know, it's skills that you will lose. So it will have serious ramification. Any question on that? Might ask more Kim, because I think Richard and Sandeep have some experience in business immigration. So, but ask away, please. Don't hold back. Like I discussed, home office visit. There's various stages various stages when you apply for a sponsorship license. They may visit your premises to actually carry out an audit to make sure that you would not be a threat to immigration control, and you have policies and procedure in place to make sure that you will be compliant. But they can also come and visit you throughout the life of your license at any time. It could be an announced visit or unannounced. So that's why, to go back to what I was saying earlier, you absolutely need to make sure that everything is order, your house is in order at all time, because you never know if the Home Office will come and knock on your door. So, and you know, inevitably you will feel a bit under pressure if they ever come and visit you, and that would be totally normal. But if everything is in order and you know that you've done what you had to do, it will be fine. And the Home Office, I've forgotten who comes to audit, the people who comes to audit your business, they will be very nice to you if you're nice to them. And if you're compliant, and they should, you know, you'll have a good chat with them, and any issue, like I said, you just pick up the phone to me or any other immigration advisor. We're here to help you. Duties and responsibilities. I don't know, Kim, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any idea of what could be some of the duties that you would have, you know, towards the with respect to the sponsored employees towards the Home Office? Do you have a bit of a
I guess keeping all the records.
That's super important. And I guess if you're HR, this is something that you will already be used to do anyway, isn't it? So like your right to work checks, that you would be familiar with, and that's quite a basic thing that the Home Office will look at, because if you don't, it's your duty to prevent illegal working as an employer. So if you carry out your right to work checks, you will already tick one very important box. And like you said, maintain migrant contact details, and that's very important throughout the period that they are working or you're sponsoring them for. This is with respect to those you are sponsoring, that you are keeping details, their contact details, so address, phone numbers, and when it changes, you have to keep record of any previous address and phone numbers and contact details, emails. That's very important throughout the sponsorship. that is, like I said, for sponsored employees. You have to be aware of GDPR, so you don't have that same requirements for employees that are not sponsored. Obviously, you will keep up-to-date contact details, but you might not keep their previous address or things like that. But your payroll will have all those details, but you have to have a list readily accessible if the Home Office was to come in and visit you. And then record keeping and recruitment practice. What I'd say is Appendix D is brilliant, sometimes a bit confusing, especially now that there's no resident labor market required. But I won't go into detail, but definitely this should be a document that you look through carefully and take good note, and you familiar yourself with it, because the Home Office, if they come and visit you, they will expect to see those documents on record for the employees you're sponsoring. So Appendix D is very important. Monitoring and reporting migrant activities. We'll discuss what that entails a bit further on. What I'd say about that is you have duties to report to the Home Office if there's any changes to your company or the sponsor employees. And also I would always advise clients, don't have to do it, but I would always, my clients, I train them to do it. Take a screenshot of any report you make online, because you will not be able to see exactly what you've reported once it's submitted. So what I always advise is to report, take a fill in on the sponsorship management system, and then take a screenshot. That is very, very helpful. And also sometimes, it's been a while, I'm not sure if I have reported this to the Home Office. You can always go back to your file and you can say, oh yeah, I did on this date. And the more information you have on files, being careful with GDPR, obviously, the easier it will be if you are audited by the Home Office, because it will show that you're taking your role seriously, that you have a good system in place, and also it stops them from having to dig too much into the system. You have things readily available for them to look at. And when it comes to extending a visa, let's say there's a change in salary or things like that. Sometimes if my clients do have it, we just attach it as part of the for the leave to remain, the extension visa, just to explain why there's appeared to be a jump from the initial certificate of sponsorship now. So, but it's not something you have to submit, but it's just good practice. I think maybe other practitioner wouldn't necessarily advise doing that, but I think it's a good practice. Ensuring that relevant professional registration. So let's say if you were to employ a doctor, a lawyer, so you have to disclose the fact that they need to be registered and accredited, and they will have to be at all time, otherwise sponsorship will need to end. Reporting various changes of circumstances to your company as the sponsor. We'll deal with that in further details further along, but this is something that often is overlooked by sponsors, and sometimes HR is not always either privy to all those conversations at higher up in terms of any possible mergers or but it's very important that everyone is aware of the duties and that it is communicated, any changes of circumstances are communicating in good time ahead of it happening, so you can plan to those involved in the sponsor license, so they can take the necessary step and plan for it if there's any step that needs to be taken. Complying with the law. I have clients that, it's not just about the Home Office, it's also about employment law. It could be, you could be regulated if you work, for example, within NHS trusts, hospitals, or you will be heavily regulated in other, with a home office. It could be a home office, but in different department of the home office. So the with respect to the sponsor license, you really need to be compliant with your other responsibilities and duties as an employer, because it will have a detrimental impact on your license. And cooperating with the home office, like I said, if they visit you, start with a nice cup of tea and a cup of coffee and biscuits if you have some, and then not bribing, but just be extremely nice with them, and they will be nice with you. I've never had any bad experience with the home office. I've always appreciate their role, appreciate that their job could be difficult. Yes, obviously you may come across someone from the home office that is a bit difficult or intimidating, and they might come across at first intimidating, but when they see that you're on top of your stuff and you are here to help support them to get the information they need and to carry out their audit, generally speaking, they will just take that, mask down a bit and just be nice and supportive, and just so you, hopefully that's the experience you will have. So, but we're all human, so I can't guarantee who might come and visit you. HR system, the key priorities. I can't stress enough the importance of, I know HR is key to the running of a sponsorship license in terms of compliance. So Kim, you have a big job here. I hope you have bodies to support you, fabulous colleagues to support you. So you need to have robust and accurate HR system in place. It could be electronic or manual, it doesn't matter, but they need to be effective, and they need to be thorough and to ensure compliance. So whatever the system you have, provided that it is accurate, it will be fine, it will do the job. And the key personnel on the license. So just to give a brief overview, when you have a license, you'll have an authorizing officer, level 1 user, a key contact, sometimes not a level 2 user. So authorizing officer is the person who's ultimately in charge of the license. If something goes wrong, they will be the one accountable ultimately. But as a level 1 user, who is the person who manages the license, they will also be accountable, not to the same extent of the authorizing officer, obviously, but they are the one who are managing the day-to-day activities on the sponsorship license, reporting to the home office, because the authorizing officer do not have access to that. Often the level 1 user will be HR, and the authorizing officer will be managing director, CEO, often that's the case. But I would say I can't think of any client that work different to that, but surely I'm sure that's possible. So it depends on the size of the business, I guess. But that just stress the importance of, like, the authorizing officer, because it's ultimately their responsibility. They need to keep an eye on the license and have regular meeting with the level 1 user, just to make sure that everything is done and in the good time and everything, that they're compliant, and maybe review their policy and procedure to see if, lesson learned, what can we change, how can we mitigate, we've made that error, what can we do to prevent that happening again. That's the kind of thing that the home office will want to see. If you make an error, they will look at it, but from experience, I'm not saying that will be the case every time, and depends on the error that you've made. But often I've had clients that if it's like a minor error or an error, they just either report to the home office and then put some including an explanation of how they are making sure that this will not happen again. So it's all about not being a threat to immigration control, and it will definitely mitigate the consequences on your license if you get something wrong. So address it ASAP. If you need advice, seek advice. So the basic thing for key personnel is to have sufficient training in all area of sponsorship, and all of them are well aware of their duties, depending on their role, and what they have to do as a sponsor. It's good to also be aware of any changes, or from HR perspective, I'd say. Often I get, depending on the size of the business, if there is a change, the managing director of your sponsored employees had a discussion and agreed something with the employee, and then you're just faced with that change, and it might be a change that is not allowed. So you really need to be well aware and have those conversations with the relevant people to make sure that all those involved with the sponsored employees, they fully aware of what they have to look out for, and that might have an impact on the license, and steps that you're going to have to take. If you have good communication, and it's like in everything, good communication, it's key, and it will save you a lot of time and hassle in the long run. So that's the main point in terms of HR. HR, for example, I'd say the basic thing, examples would be having good records of absences, holidays, sickness absence, and also whereabouts of the worker, the migrant worker that you're sponsoring, if they're off-site one day. Mainly if the Home Office was to knock on your door, you know exactly where they are, and you can tell them, well, actually, today they were on site for this reason. So, and this is very important. But and the fact, whether they're on holiday or not, and whether they're off sick or not. So you have to have a good system in place. To go back to the example of the managing director, HR might take a bit of time until that information is passed on to HR. So the managing director really needs to be aware of the importance of this requirement and pass on the information ASAP. So, for example, usually in staff handbook, you need to call in the morning before a certain time, and so they should be in the habit of passing on the information to HR soon thereafter. Belt and braces is my, I always say to clients, always go for belt and braces. It will just save you lots of worries and hassle in the long run, because you have everything in place to make sure that there's no gap, that your system is robust. So any questions so far? Can I suggest that if anyone has a question, just put, I think you can put your hand up, don't you, on Zoom, and yeah. I can just stop. Yeah?
Yeah, so far so good.
Fabulous. Okay, fantastic. So now sponsorship management system. So basically when you get a license, you get password, username and password to access it. Like I said, authorizing officer do not have access to the sponsorship management system account. If they do want to have access, they need to go on the license as level 1 user. Or level 2, but level 2 they have a bit restricted a restrictive role. Level 1 user are the people that can that manage the license. You can have more than one level 1 user, so that's totally possible. And that is basically an account, that an online tool that allow you to report anything you have to report to the Home Office. And I'd say a very important thing that there is on the SMS, we call it the SMS, that is often overlooked. The Home Office will send messages, or not advice, but if something is about to change or anything like that, there's a board on the first page when you log in, and so you should actually log on to your SMS system at least once a month, just to review those and to make sure that, you know, just, it could take you 5 minutes, that nothing has changed with respect to the situation of your sponsored employees. That's a very, very important point. And I would advise you to keep like a sheet and record when you've actually done that. The Home Office will love you for it if they visit you. So just to show that you have a process in place and you do review the license. I'd say a lot of my clients don't do it, even if I advise it. They're just so busy. And if they're not sponsoring someone for a while, they are sponsoring someone, but they don't have to sponsor any new employees or renew any visa, they will not access the SMS, which is not good. I really think it will take you, if nothing has changed, it will take you about 5-10 minutes and record it. It's good practice. And also, yeah, if there's any changes, the Home Office are really good at putting messages on the board at the front of when you log in. So please do that. Really do that. Yeah, it's good practice. So what would you use the SMS for? I was intending to ask questions, but I know, Richard, you do a bit of immigration, you do business immigration. Kim, I don't want you to put on the spot for every single question, so I think I'll just carry on. But yeah, because I don't like putting people on the spot. So I'll do that if that's all right with you, you two. So the SMS, so you would you would use it to manage your key personnel, like so your authorizing officer, level 1 user, and level 2 user, your key contact if you have a representative. If there's any change, if someone leaves the business, and like your level 1 user leaves the business and you appoint a new one, you need to do that via the SMS. But it's very important to stress that you always have to have an authorizing officer, a level 1 user in key contact. You don't have to have a level 2 user, but so that's another thing that you really have to bear in mind. If someone, your level 1 user, HR, for example, they're about to move on and they're the level 1 user, they in order for the new HR advisor or consultant or manager to have access to the sponsorship management system, they will need to have been appointed and successfully appointed as a level 1 user. So this should happen before the initial level 1 user leave the business. Often you'll do a best practice would be that before they, whilst they're on their notice, you make your application to add the new HR person as a level 1 user, and you can get training, and then the new level 1 user advice, just take out the former level 1 user when they leave, depending on timing, obviously. If the company do not want them to have access anymore because they're on their notice, you can do that, but you always have to have a level 1 user, so really think carefully about the logistic of it. And one thing I have to actually stress is you are not allowed to share a password. access code to the sponsorship license. If you do that, there will be consequences on the license and could be revoked. You cannot do that. So you cannot share your password or to anyone. It is your personal access detail. So that is why you have to do the swap, the change of your key personnel in good time to make sure you have access. Now, it will happen sometimes that, and it shouldn't, because there could be consequences of that. But sometimes the level 1 user leaves or have left for ages, but that the sponsor license is a bit dormant, they're not sponsoring anyone, or they they haven't had to do anything with respect to sponsoring migrant workers. Or the person who replaced the initial level 1 user, for example, wasn't aware. We can do something about it. It would have to be on paper, it won't be online. And done that for clients. I shouldn't be doing that, but more usual than not, it would be fine. But you have to be well aware that you're not being compliant. So again, I would say to mitigate the consequences, just make sure that you address how you have fix, how you would deal with the situation going forward to make sure that will not happen again, and explain what happened. So that's extremely, extremely important. So the other things that it's usual, so applying for a certificate of sponsorship. So before being able to sponsor a foreign national, you need to assign a certificate of sponsorship. So that's one thing that you will do via the SMS. You will report any activities with respect to the sponsored employee, and it could also be any changes to your business, any changes to the key personnel, any changes to the size of your business. We'll discuss that for the details later on, and paying various fees, paying for and tracking the progress of an action plan if your sponsor license have been downgraded. So there's various things here that it's your main channel of communication with the Home Office. And like I said, any communication you do make with the Home Office, I would always advise to take a screenshot, because when it's submitted, very little information will be available for you to actually see. I'm just aware of the time. I'll be quick. 10 working days. So usually you'll have to report migrant activities within 10 working days. And that will include if they're absent for too long, for more than 10 consecutive working days without permission, or if it's the first time you sponsor them and they do not show up on the day that they're meant to start. If they have been promoted, change of job title. I always take a belt and braces approach again in my reporting when I advise clients. It doesn't do any harm. So a change, usually, well, not usually, if it's an annual increment in terms of change of salary, you don't have to report that. You may decide to report that, so you have records of that, especially if you sponsor someone for 5 years. You may want to just report it, and also that will trigger you to think whether the change is a fundamental change and you actually they need to apply for a new sponsorship. Because if it's a promotion and they end up doing either another job, their job fall under a different subcode, so that you will have to terminate and apply for a new job. And to go back to communication, it's very important that if that's the case, that the migrant worker do not start in their new role they've been promoted to until you secure a new visa for them. So you might want to sleep tight and postpone the promotion until the visa is is granted. Otherwise, you'll be in breach, and they'll be in breach of their the terms of their visa, and that will have ramification going forward. So that's a very important. A location, if they change location, changing the number of hours, be mindful of the salary and the number of hours. When they work for you, they need to work in accordance with their certificate of sponsorship. If in doubt, seek legal advice, because yeah, it's either you have your duty to report, or it's considered a change of employment. You need to apply for a new visa. And in terms of your business, it could be a TUPE transfer. TUPE transfer, this is something that do happen with sponsorship, and you will be dealing with some tight deadlines. So again, make sure that senior management are well aware of this requirements, and that they keep you in the loop if you're the level 1 user, so that you know what is coming. Especially if it's a TUPE transfer, I would hope that HR will be involved fairly early on, but because you will have to plan this, whether you're acquiring or staff are transferring from you to the new company. You will have to take steps as the current sponsor or as the new sponsor. We can have a look at that a bit later on. So those are important things. And also think that points that sponsors tend to forget: when you apply for a license, you specify whether you're a small, medium, large, or charity business. So if your business is booming and you end up having a bigger, you've grown so much, you might end up being no longer a small business, but considered a large business, for example, medium, large. So you would have to report that. And in terms of fees, that might have an implication. So it's really, really important that you keep an eye on that. And when you do report, often more often than not, you need to record a residential address and contact telephone number of the sponsor employees, and email address that you have on record. 20 working days, quickly. You would have to report a change, 20 working days, change of name. It's mainly with respect to the company, substantial change of nature of the business, convicted of relevant offense, either business or the key personnel. You really need to keep an eye on that, because you need to qualify as a key personnel. And there's a sale, a merger, stop trading, or go into insolvency. Those are all a situation that you will absolutely have to report to the Home Office, and have a plan in place, because it will have an impact on your staff. So especially, well, your sponsored employees. So in this case, so you plan this. Sponsor change of circumstances, I won't go into much detail. It's just to go back to, normally you report everything online using the sponsor management system, the SMS, but sometimes you need to use the sponsor change of circumstances form, that it depends on the situation, and there are specific duties and responsibility in relation to mergers, takeover, demergers, to assess whether it is actually a TUPE transfer or not. That's a very important question from an employment point of view, but also from an immigration point of view, if you're sponsoring staff that are affected by the sale or the acquisition. So that's a very important one. So the SMS, I just wanted to give you, there's so many functions on the SMS, but I just wanted you to have a look at what it looks like when you actually go on the first page. So that's the first page. A level 1 or level 2 user will have to put their personal user ID and password that they haven't shared with anyone to access it. For example, Kim, if you're new to the business, I would say if the plan is for you to go on as a level 1 user, as soon as you get access, go and print the license summary and have a look at, so who's listed on there, who are the key personnel, how big is the business, you know, based on the latest information you gave to the Home Office. When do you have to renew your sponsor license by, how many certificate of sponsorship you have, or what type on what type of visa can you sponsor, so skilled worker, intra-company transfer, those kind of things. So you have to look at that and take note and diarize any deadlines, any because no a sponsor license is valid for 4 years, so you want to diarize that to make sure that you renew it in good time. Don't rely on the Home Office sending you a reminder, although they normally do, but don't rely on that. And we can also discuss, there's also the number of certificates that you will have in the bank, for those that will need to extend their visa, for example. But that, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because if you don't have enough, you can always apply to increase your allocation, your annual allocation. But yeah, as you can see from the screen here, there's a request renewal of your annual allocation, or you can request an increase of your allocation. So that's very straightforward, and you can apply using a priority service for that. So at an additional cost, for an additional fee, the Home Office is good at that, you can get your application be processed quicker. So that's how you would manage your key personnel. And then you would have, so when you submit your application, you have to wait for the Home Office to approve it. And that's the screen that you'll see whether it has been approved by the Home Office. Your application has been processed and it's cleared. But another way that you'll see that is the new level 1 user will receive an email from the Home Office giving them a password. Usually the username will be sent to the authorizing officer so that they can pass it on to you, and you have your personal password to access it. So that will be a good clue that your application was successful. So I won't go into much detail about that. Like you see here, so it has been submitted, it's been requested, and you're waiting for a decision to come through. And you will see active means it's been approved, and you should have or will receive an email like we've discussed earlier, or it could be written refuse. So that's your status of the application. It feels like there's so much more I could discuss, but I think I'm going to have to leave it here for now.